roll as we go along. So hold that thought for 1 second. And we want to try and make this as fluid as possible so we can call back on time as well. So I'm going to break back to Amrish and ask one question, and then let him flow with your with the panel, and then we'll come back to you. My question to Amrish is the evolution of sports technology and how we can bring the continent up to speed. You know, what I like about what Emeka has tried to do is he set the tone for us in terms of what is data, and so it's very important that it comes from one of us in Africa, because sometimes the assumption is always like this thing is some kind of foreign concept, and you know, Emeka comes from a very solid background in data, and it's always a problem for us in Africa. Once you mention data, everybody wants to run away, and we've got this really incredible panel. We want to get their feedback, and then we'll come back to this conversation. Over to you.
Sure. Thank you for sharing the local insights. Very helpful, Emeka. And based on the question, so sport technology is obviously evolving a lot, and you know, it's extremely tricky to try and find the best solutions. So before we hear from the panel, first we need to look at the view of sports tech as a solutions-oriented approach to the problem that we're looking to solve. So it has the potential to accelerate progress and solve a lot of the problems if it's used well. And, you know, with Volute Sport, we've had collaboration with some of the biggest companies in football. And I realized that you can have some of the best technology in the world, but until you solve those real challenges, then it's generally useless and badly managed, which is what we saw. So just to give a bit of an insight, because of this, so we spent 18 to 24 months profiling over 30 companies to see who would solve these problems. And then with the exposure over the last 10 years in the UK, Middle East, for example, we realized there are certain problems we had to solve, especially in more prominent regions such as the Middle East and Africa. But to accelerate the progress of Africa, for example, we need to enhance the effectiveness of accessibility from top to bottom in the clubs, convenience, make sure it's easy to use. Time and money is also important. So how are you going to make things, how are you going to free up more time to do other things? And with money, how are you going to get the return of investment? So we then have to relate to the dynamics of the sport and each of the contextual ecosystems. So with going back to your question, with regards to using sports tech, it's not to be as sexy as such, but why it's used as a tool to actually anchor the actual frameworks. And then you have to combine this with the human consciousness to solve challenges with the aim of ecosystem connectivity on a micro, meso, and macro level. So the question we ask to accelerate progress with regards to sports tech is, one, how can we make things easier? And two, how can we contribute to building agile models? Sports tech in the game is evolving quick, faster than ever, so we need to maintain agility to scale effectively. So I can bring in the panel for a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't get you, Amrish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying carry on with the question.
Yeah, sure. So we'll speak to the team in the panel based in specific areas and experiences, and we'll focus on like how Africa can maximize the adoption of sports tech into the region. So Michael Lindeman's got a lot of experience working with Ajax Fulham in the Middle East as well. So Mike, let's start with you. With exposure in the UK and Middle East regions as an assistant and performance coach, can you share with our viewers what you experienced and how we can accelerate the use of sports tech in African football?
Okay, Amrish. Okay, thank you for the invite, guys. Yeah, I've been working with Premier League clubs such as Ajax and Fulham and Hamburg and my experience there was very different to my experience when I was in the Middle East, when I was performance coach with Al Ahly in Cairo and Al Waqda in the Emirates. Well, the first thing I realized was that there had to be a club vision, a strong club culture and a philosophy for anything to be effective. You know, with European clubs, when I was at Ajax, for example, we knew which direction we wanted to go, because all departments, if it was medical or performance or the analysts or even the scouting, we all had our noses in the same direction, as we say in Holland. For example, I hear a lot of people always saying, data analysts, measuring is knowing. Measuring is knowing. To measure is to know. Well, I believe some of the key is just the opposite. Just try to find out what you want to know and then start measuring it instead of the other way around. And I think I believe vision and philosophy are very important and first building blocks for any successful club or nation. Once you have a vision and philosophy, it's easier to decide what tools you need and how you want to build a framework. I think it can help accelerate progress because everybody is aligned and going in the same one direction. It's something I found needed more work in outside the EU. When I was in Egypt or in Emirates, the club didn't have a clear vision or philosophy, and we have all these departments.
Looks like his connection is freezing. Okay. Can we bring in Richard Allen?
I think he should come back on in a second.
We'll come back to him. Let's go to Richard Allen.
Yeah.
Hi, Emeka. Thanks very much, Amrish. Yeah, I mean, following on really what Michael was saying, and I don't disagree. Within talent ID, I suppose there are a number of issues that we have to consider. One, highly competitive marketplaces, huge areas to cover. And I think many clubs have fallen into a little bit of a trap where they feel that data and tech is the only solution. And I think, go back to Michael's point, I think it clearly is really important. But first and foremost, we need to ensure that we have a very sound philosophy that everybody buys into and agrees to. What drops out of that will be then from a football perspective, will be the playing style. And then from that, obviously, it would help us in terms of our development of players, but also the recruitment strategy, because you'll then get your player profiles. So I think you need to do that piece of work first. And then what drops out of that is the data that you might require. So, you know, I've seen clubs that have, you know, spent lots and lots of money and are awash with data, but not necessarily the data that they need. So going back to Michael's point, I suppose. So once we know the type of game that we're going to play, the type of players that we want in a recruitment setting, having analytics, having tech will help us when we know that we haven't got enough people on the ground. But certainly it's a combination. It's a combination of people with a library of knowledge and skills and experience to watch and understand players, coupled with good data that means something. So I'll give you an example. So if you're going to decide your playing style is you're going to play 3 at the back with wing backs. Well, what's the data that you require? Well, it could be physical data. So you might need your wing backs to run a lot, in terms of how far they cover in a game and at what kind of speed. It might be their acceleration and de-acceleration. So we can become really precise on what we're looking for. If it's a high pressing team, you're going to need other physical outcomes. But we might also be looking at technical outcomes. But we mustn't forget, as much as those are important, we're then looking for some psychological qualities. What are their behaviors? Do they have these elite behaviors that you might require? Because even though we've set that philosophy and we know the playing style and we've got the player profiles, at some point in time, things might change. 5 years, 10 years, a new manager, a new owner. we want to change the direction, or something else happens in world football, the game changes. So therefore you might say, well, actually we need to find players that are fundamentally adaptable. So whatever happens, they're able to adjust because they've been developed in the right way, or we've discovered these players and they have these particular qualities. And of course, that's more difficult to recognize with analytics and data. We clearly understand that's not as precise. I'm not saying that it's impossible, and there are some things that we would look to see. And I've been involved with national associations where we've been trying to be quite precise on what that might look like and try and measure that in some kind of sense. But that's when you need that combination. But certainly, I think if you're looking to speed up the process and accelerate, as we're talking about within West Africa, or we're trying to be more competitive, or we just haven't got enough people. We're not Manchester City, we're not Chelsea, where we've got reasonably unlimited resources. We've got lots and lots of people on the ground, coupled together with obviously tech solutions coming out of their ears. How do we become smarter? How do we become more efficient and effective, and make sure that the people part of it come in at the right stage of the process? So you might have a setup whereby your analytics and data are the things that draw and do the kind of the wide sweep. And it then might be people to go out and just check that. You then might go back to the analytics and data, and then you might go back to the people again. So that process, I think, is really, really important to embed. But fundamentally, going back to what we said right at the beginning, you need to understand what you're looking for, and that will impact on then what you need to understand and what you need to know, what the questions are you need to answer.
Thank you, Richard. Completely agree with that. I mean, one of the experiences we have is in the UK, like you said, you've got, like, say, 10, 15 staff all involved in the data analytics, looking at the data, being able to put it all together, et cetera, compile it all. So you generally find in regions like Africa and the Middle East, the performance coaches generally pulled in like 3, 4, 5 different directions. They're trying to coach, they're trying to deal with the physio stuff, they're even trying to deal with the performance side, and then they're trying to get on the field and actually coach the players as well. So using the sports tech solution can help accelerate that, because it gives a technical awareness for these people to see what's in front of them, to actually help their understanding through the process as well. I believe, Monèm, do you have any comments on what Richard and myself just spoke about?
Yes, thank you, Amrish, and thank you, Emeka, for the invite. Just very briefly, 30 seconds comment on Richard and Mike's, which is just to reinforce what they have said, both of them. First of all, adhering to a philosophy, the club's philosophy, that could be set either the philosophy of the club could be set either from the top to the bottom, or from the bottom up. I do believe in both. However, I also wanted to reinforce one thing very important, which is, most of the tech or the data that we need to collect, they should come from the field. They should come from the coaches and the players themselves. The manager would ask the scientist, I need a solution for this issue, could you help? And then the scientist will apply the data, the technology, in order to answer that problem or that problematic. However, what I wanted to say here is there are some important and basic general things that have to be collected from the start for all players, all teams. And those are basically generally basic for the safety of the players and health of the club itself. Testing, for example, physical fitness or the general health and fitness of the players is very important. When recruiting a new player, the player has to go through a medical check. If the players don't go through a medical check, that could cost lots of money for the club, because the player could be out, or could be maybe injured, or could stay on the bench for many, many months. Whereas with the proper assessment, we could save a lot of money and lots of time. This is a briefly, and then certainly I will go back to you for more other things to talk about. Thanks so much.
I completely agree with that. I mean, the solutions, especially in sports tech, are all out there to give an insight for before players are going to get injured. That's the most important thing, because before back in the day, you would keep testing the players. Next thing you know, they get injured, they'll be out for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So now it's a sense of like anticipating the recovery by using sports tech, by plugging all the data in one place, giving an insight to the coaches, but also to the board members, because the players are the main assets in clubs. And this is why Manchester United paid 500k for Alexis Sanchez, for example. This is why Juventus have spent a lot of money on Cristiano Ronaldo, because they are the real asset that can help bring everything all together. So I want to go a little bit to back to Mike. Mike is back. So we've been speaking about the philosophy, touching on that. So I just wanted to see if you wanted to touch on what you were saying last time before you jumped off.
Okay, guys, sorry, I think we had a little internet problem. I don't know how far you could have heard me, but I was talking about my experience when I was at Ajax or at Fulham in the Premier League, and my experiences with Al Ahly club in Cairo or Al Wada in the Emirates. That they were totally different experiences. According to the performance side. And then I said, I believe first thing a club needs to have is a vision and a philosophy, because they are the first building blocks of any successful club or nation. And once you have a vision and a philosophy, so everybody in the club, in every department, knows which way we want to go, what are our values, what are our beliefs, it's easier to decide what tools you need and how you want to build a framework. It can help accelerate progress because everybody's aligned and going in the same direction. It's something I found needed more work in clubs outside the EU and UK. So once you found out what you know, you can use sport technology as an anchor, as Amrish already mentioned. There are good solutions we use with Volute Sport. We are looking for ways which helps to give players, coaches, and even the board good insights to make decisions faster and educate the people involved. The second thing to accelerate progress is that clubs or federations need to use solutions that can analyze match and training data easily. So the data and the performance coaches can use this to inform the managers about the players' internal, external, and mental load, or even game tactics. When I coach in Africa or the Middle East, clubs don't have 10 data or performance coaches or analysts, like when I coached in Europe at Ajax or Fulham or Hamburg. In Ajax, I had 5 fitness coaches working underneath me. At Fulham, I had 8. In Hamburg, I had 4, and in Al Ahly, I found myself in a totally different environment because I was the only one. So I also believe that environment determines. So first, the vision, the philosophy. Second, decide what you want to measure instead of measuring for the sake of measuring. And if you have 10 staff members in your performance departments, you can measure and analyze A, B, C, D. But if you are alone, which sometimes I was in Africa country, I wanted and I had time to analyze only A and B. There was not much time left. You cannot put 48 hours into 24. But the club bought a system that could measure A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So they wanted to know everything, but only one guy to analyze it. Then you have to process it, inform the coaches, and then it was chaos. So vision, philosophy again is key, I think, to determine the tools you need to improve. You often see clubs buying technology which doesn't run parallel with their environment, with their vision, with their philosophy, or even staff level. The third thing, what tools are needed, and then strategies to implement all these things. So Amrish and myself at Volute Sports, we first like to analyze each club, each federation, their departments, their culture, before we present solutions. We have experienced this is the most efficient way to accelerate progress. Then build on this progress to develop the overall ecosystem with all departments involved. So not look at only at the data guys and the financial guys and the recruitment guys. No, it has to be one ecosystem. So step by step, develop a total working system based on vision. Again, I come back at vision and philosophy, because that will be the foundation for the future to be successful, I think. And otherwise, solutions are just one-dimensional and will not be effective.
Now, if I could just come in, Michael, there's something that I see, particularly with interacting with people who run football on the continent, people who run coaching. There's this big this fear of, when you try and explain to them the importance of using analytics, the importance of trying to fit in even within their small framework, what can work for them as a sports club, for instance. Because in Africa, we haven't, it's still like a novel concept. And this is something that, even in terms of implementing it elsewhere in other sectors, there's a struggle. And so when you get an opportunity, let's say, to analyze, and the good thing is that you've had the benefit of working in North Africa. If you come further down to Sub-Saharan Africa, it's almost like, don't go there. We can't touch that because we don't understand what it is that you're talking about, and particularly from that perspective. How do you get them to understand that, yes, it might be big for them to use all the available tools, but how do you even get them to start with the smallest tools that they need to build from?
Well, I think it's first thing I always do when I talk, because I've experienced this, exactly what you say. You go into a club and then you talk to a performance analyst and he thinks, this guy works at Ajax and I don't know anything. And he's just already building his wall around him to protect himself from everything. And then, but I think you have to realize that you have to make them part of the solution. So I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you make things better. And that's why I always like to talk first individually, because in the first, I did it in a group, and then the doctor was there and the performance analyst, and then everybody starts to look at each other. And then, but if you talk individually and you listen what they have to say, because I think listening is also a key, and then try to work with them and try to make them feel that they're part of the process we're going to start now, instead of me judging or reviewing him. No, it's not about that. It's we start at A, and then together we're going to be step by step, because first you have to walk before you can run, I think.
Absolutely. Let's go to Professor Jemni. Monèm, Jemni.
Yes. Well, thanks, Emeka. I cannot agree more with your comments. It's a great comment. And listen, it is not only the African country that is suffering from that issue you mentioned, which is basically afraid from trying something new. The American country, America, the United States, is exactly in the same way. We're not talking about American football. When we talk about soccer in the state, there are lots of clubs who are really still diving into what technology should we use. And it's all about mentality. It is changing the mentality. It is basically having to admit and having to trust the scientists who have some technologies that could be very easy to apply to help the job of the coaches and the managers. It's all about believing into these new trends and let the scientists do their job and put in their nose a little bit without hurting anybody, without hurting the run of the club or the team or anything. Some tools could be very easy, very cheap, and others could be very very expensive too. But it has to start like what Mike said. You have to start walking before you run. And then when you introduce those new technologies, people see the difference and immediately will adhere to it. My question to you, Emeka, and to all the panelists, do you know in your surrounding managers, chairmen of clubs who have been sending their staff, their technical staff, to workshops in staff development? And how many times did they do it? How many times did they ask their managers to go back to attend workshops, conferences? And that is the question everywhere, not only in Africa, in Europe, in the States, in Asia, everywhere.
Let me even take it a step further, and I'm glad we have Emeka here. You know, you deal with governments, you deal with corporates, you deal with institutions. You know, let's even go outside the sphere of sports and football. You know, how much struggle is it for you to get them to understand when you put together stats and data based on how you try to get them to transform?
It's a big struggle. We are still
we have an echo. Why do something is on somewhere? We're hearing you twice.
Person's opinion, and unfortunately, the hippos are gatekeepers in this organization, and they don't want to be seen as.
Hang on, Emeka. Something is switch off one of them. I think you have double. There's an echo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. We can. Yes.
Okay, so we have a situation where the hippos are running the organization, and the data will make them look like they don't know what they're saying. So a lot of them don't encourage it because they're going to lose power and relevance. The thing about data is that it opens up, you know, the truth without sentiments, without being subjective. And that's not where a lot of people like to play at. So when your organization is built,
sorry, we've lost your audio, Emeka. We've lost your audio. Let's go to Amrish, and then we'll come back to you.
Sure. Just based on what Mike was saying and what Monèm have been saying a lot about how to maximize the effectiveness of sports tech, what you realize is a lot of sports technology companies come in and they have their, they come into different regions and it's all about this is our sports tech. It does A, it does B, and it does C. And the clubs, for example, don't always have the technical awareness in terms of like what they exactly need or how they need something. So what happens is they go get the money and then they go and spend the money into purchasing the tech. But then, as Mike and Monèm have said, you need the alignment from top to bottom. You need the alignment with the players, the staff, the board members as well. But the way to enhance the solve the problems in Africa, for example, is like Mike said, you've got to walk before you can run. But you need the right education and you need the right awareness. And if you use the sports tech in a way in the context of the clubs where they currently are, their philosophies, for example, their technical awareness, you're then able to use this tech as a tool to accelerate their own progress from an educational standpoint of view. And we find that works really well, which is why it's really important to kind of be able to have that alignment inside the clubs too. Rather than just introducing sports tech, it's going to be meaningless otherwise. You have to use its education. But I want to pass on to Chris Barnes. Chris Barnes has had a lot of experience in the Premier League from 1997 with Middlesbrough as well, and was one of the first people to bring in sports science. It's very credible. So what I want to ask Chris is, with the acceleration you've seen in the Premier League, it's growing at a massive speed. What can we take from that to enhance the African region, like the similarities and the differences, for example, or in what context?
Yeah, thanks very much, Amrish. And I guess just to open, the first thing I would say is how strongly I agree with some of the comments that have been made by the other panelists, particularly Michael and Monèm, in relation to culture and in relation to the process by which you can effectively have technology adopted. For every one of us, whether we are in England, Europe, Asia, the United States, or Africa, the process of adoption of technology, effectively adopting technology, is a journey. The journey for me has been a long one. I showed a slide earlier where in 2002, we were fortunate to take the first GPS tracking devices in the United Kingdom. And we didn't have a clue what to do with them. So when I say the process in my journey and the journey in England has been particularly slow, that's predominantly because we've been at the front end of a lot of these technologies, and we are the people that have made so many mistakes. I'm delighted to have been able to make those mistakes, because we then know what we know and we know what we don't know. And I've been very fortunate to be in an environment where I've been encouraged to make mistakes. And there are not many sporting environments where you are encouraged or allowed to make mistakes. But what this actually means is, hopefully I've arrived at a position today where I'm reasonably confident in what works and what doesn't work. And I've had the opportunity to trial the process and the models across the globe, in the United States, in Asia, and now we're just beginning working in Africa. And what I can say is, 6 years ago, when I first visited the United States to talk about the use of wearable technology, the country was in exactly the same position that Africa was when I first came here last year, and the same position that Asia was 4 years ago. And the journey and the trajectory that we've gone on in the United States and in Asia, and the journey that will go on in Africa, will be much, much more rapid and at a much higher trajectory, simply because we won't need to go through the same learning process by mistakes, and we can take on board the lessons that we've learned. The message about retro-engineering is so true. Big problem with so many technologies is, and I have the good fortune at the moment to work with some of the biggest Premier League clubs that we have, and I despair when I go into some of these places, because they have every piece of technology you could ever hope to have. And then if you equate what they have and the impact this technology actually has on performance, it is minimal. And it's a box ticking exercise. They must have X and they must have Y and they must have Z, yet they don't really know how to get best value from it.
I think we're grateful to you because you've made most of the mistakes. We don't have to make those mistakes anymore.
I've made more mistakes than everybody on this call put together. Trust me, I have. And I say it like I'm proud of it. Maybe I shouldn't be, but actually I wear it as a little bit of a badge of honor in that respect.
That's a sign of our human qualities anyway.
Okay, thank you. The comment about retro-engineering is so true. The starting point for any of this has to be a question. And the question comes from the field, and it comes from the coach, and it comes from the philosophy and the beliefs and what it is that the coach is trying to achieve. If we don't understand that, how can we begin to provide him or her with information that they can usefully take on board, and that will impact on performance. To take the technology is easy. Anybody can switch a piece of equipment on, and anybody can use a computer to produce a piece of paper with a lot of numbers on. The real skill in all of this process, and this is the piece that I feel passionate about, it's creating the middle piece. Because still, in an awful lot of Premier League clubs, doesn't matter what the technology is they're using, they think that, they being the sports scientists and the fitness coaches, think their job finishes with a piece of paper that they put on a desk. The job of the fitness coaches is to take that piece of paper and actually make some sense of it and create messages that the coaches understand and create messages that relate to the coach. And that's no easy job. I showed a slide earlier which shows about 16 of the coaches I've worked with. I've worked with over 30. They all speak different language. They all have different beliefs. So my job as a translator of this information changes every time I go in with a new coach. And the real job here, the real challenge here is not with technology. It's with ensuring that the technology is used in such a way that we can create that journey through so that it impacts on performance. So that's, you probably gathered the passion I have for this and the despair I have also for the misuse and inappropriate use of so many technologies in elite sport where money is no excuse. The process we started with CAF and all of the African nations when tracking technology has now been introduced to all of the African nations was we've had people together now in 2 workshops, and the focus of these workshops has been less about technology, and it's been about empowering people and giving people the confidence to go away and not just produce numbers, but to know how to work with and how to act on numbers so that they can truly impact on the coaches that they work with.
I agree with you completely there, Chris. I mean, the experience in the Middle East, I found that same kind of issue where there's people have the tech there, but you've got coaches from South America, from Africa, you've got Middle Eastern coaches, other parts of Europe, and it's not, like you said, it's not just what's on the piece of paper or what the numbers say. It's about getting that development philosophy in terms of knowing how to relate the data on the context of what's needed. Because just because data says A, B, and C does not mean that it's going to relate to the actual scenario all the time. And I think that's, again, going back to what I said before, I think that's when we can use sports tech and a framework to put an education process to actually help people make the informed decisions themselves, rather than just buying sports tech, using sports tech, and then just looking at the numbers. And then that kind of has an adverse effect as well, because people need familiarity, and they also need, they don't want to be intimidated by too much data. So I agree with you completely there.
I think just to kind of close this from my point of view, I'm also a coach, a qualified coach, and something that you learn as a coach is when to step in and coach and when to keep quiet. And I think the big problem we have, and I'm possibly opening myself up for an awful lot of criticism here, but a big problem we have with sports scientists and strength and conditioning coaches is sometimes they don't know when to say nothing. And sometimes the data, the information actually doesn't say anything. So leave the coach to get on with coaching and don't bother him with nothing messages. The technology is there to identify when there's a message to be transmitted to the coach. If there isn't, keep your mouth shut and keep away. Let him get on with his job.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just to bring in Burak. Burak, obviously you're aware of all the sports tech we use on the field and the context of how we can use it, but can you give us an insight in terms of how this can also help the commercial side for the club as well, and how it can all connect as an overall ecosystem in the nature of Africa?
Hi everyone. It is a very interesting topic, by the way, and thank you for inviting. Yes, and the commercial approach was totally different than today. But past approach is past now, and technology and usage of data and analytics is a key for sponsorships, commercializing the content, and fan engagement. Today, it is possible to build up campaigns for sponsors, for brands, for clubs, based on data, match data and player data, and using those data and analytics for sponsorship purposes. It is another source of revenue for sporting organizations and clubs. In the meantime, it is an extremely good tool for fan engagement. And people and fans are very much curious of and analytics of their heroes and match data and things like that. And clubs, sporting organizations, federations, governing bodies can use this kind of outcomes for the purpose of fan engagement and creating new commercial revenues easily today. And having a sideboard or having a logo on backdrops and receiving free tickets, this kind of sponsorship rights are becoming history slowly. And in the new world, especially after this pandemic, all sponsorship is on digital, and new commercial revenues, new commercial sources, and fan engagement are all on digital platforms. And especially using data for sponsorship purposes is getting popular day by day.
Great, thank you, Burak. So based on that, obviously there's clubs that are becoming a bit more, they want to connect the fans with the players, and like you mentioned, also using player data. How Chris might be able to give an insight in this as well. Monèm. So the question is, how sensitive would player data be if you are to engage it with fans? Because obviously, like clubs and teams all kind of want to keep everything in house with data. I mean, I've realised a lot of clubs and teams, especially in the Premier League or Championship, they're not happy to openly share data. If we're to enhance fan engagement, what do you see any implications in being able to use? Like, what kind of implication do you see in being able to use that player data for fan engagement purposes?
My guess is that, I mean, this is it's a real interesting and quite difficult situation at the moment. So, you know, we all know for a number of years now, a certain amount of data has been shared with fans during Champions League games, very limited information and data, but as and when players leave the field, that information is shared. Catapult, who Kieran, who you heard from earlier, have for the last few years engaged in a project in Australia with a rugby league game called the State of Origin, where the Catapult data is actually streamed live during the game. I guess the interesting argument from that point of view is who actually owns the data, and that's a question that would certainly need to be addressed, because if the data is actually owned by the players, then there will come a point where they will be particularly uncomfortable with their data being shared free of charge. The second thing is that there is also a position taken by certain people that wearable data during games is an extension of their medical data, and therefore that is something that most certainly should be subject to careful protection. So the open sharing of it is clearly something that would need further exploration. But there is certainly in the United States, and in the case that I mentioned in Australia, there are examples where player data has been shared live with a television audience and with a stadium audience. It's all with a view to enhancing that fan engagement.
So, I mean, if I will come in here, there's something that we we still don't get on the continent, which is how much more all of this data becomes important, even from a commercial point of view, what it does, even from a fan engagement point of view. Because one, we don't have games on TV, we don't have some of these platforms in the stadiums. And as Emeka was saying earlier, the guys at the top, they're the ones who need the education. Because, you know, it's one thing to educate the coaches, it's one thing to educate some of the clubs don't even have sports scientists. There is a club, Vandyke, who have acquired some of these tools. And I think if you go down Southern Africa, they have a lot of them. In North Africa, they have a lot of them. But from a management point of view, how much of those hawks at the top understand that investing in this data becomes even far more valuable when fans are in the stadium and you can provide them information about the players. And sometimes when you ask them, okay, why isn't this player playing? We think he's the best player, but he's not playing. Why isn't that other player? In fact, the chairman of the club can decide that, hey, I want this player to play, and the coach says, I don't want him to play. But if you do have this information available, then it makes a lot of sense to say, this is why this player is not playing, and this is why the other one needs to play. So I think that education becomes far more important, not just for those who are at the point where they run them, but I think we need to get the guys at the top to actually sit down and let them understand why they need to embrace this. And I mean, some of you already do teaching in work with universities. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Something again I need to emphasize, which is because the whole thing about technology and data is the same thing in every sector of the economy, whether sports or manufacturing. Digital transformation must start from the top. If there's no buy-in from the leaders, it can't change cultures in the organization. The most important thing is culture. The speakers have talked about the philosophy, which is very key, which is also culture. It matters. If there's no culture, the transformation will fail. That's how companies get it wrong. Okay. Now, let me bring up Liverpool. Liverpool has a buy-in already from leadership, from Boston Red Sox. So they've come into the owners have come into Liverpool with that culture. It's easy to drill down, the benefits of technology in. Even in the situation where there was a case of bad decision made by Komoli in 2000 and when the
2012, I think, when they bought Carroll, is that right?
Andy Carroll and Henderson and the Aston Villa player, what's his name? The guy that crosses the ball. Okay. Even at that point, that decision, Komoli's bad decision, actually stalled the use of data for a moment, because it was bad press and people felt like that data was not the solution. But FSG stuck on because they knew that was just a mistake. And that's the point that data started coming into football, like the second phase of analytics evolution. And they kept using it, and some people had the belief that something could come out of this, because that failure itself was huge. It cost him his job. It cost two players their position. Okay, so the thing is that an organization that doesn't have a very strong leadership would have given up on data and technology. So it's key. When Arsene Wenger bought Arsenal bought the analytics company, it's because the leadership believed, as much as they didn't exploit it fully, but the mere fact that they invested in it came from the fact that there was a leadership buy-in. It's key to get that leadership buy. In other sectors of the economy, data science fail. Leaders don't believe in it. In fact, the leaders go out of their way to make it look like it was a bad decision. So if they are not sold, you can't see the wins. We can't even talk about the philosophies, okay? It's very key. And that philosophy is charted from the top. And when it drills down, it changes the culture of the organization, and then they can imbibe in it and they use it to extract value to achieve their objectives.
Yeah, we've lost
goals and so on.
All right, thank you. We're going to wrap up with one comment each from everyone, because we have Professor Goldman, who's waiting from San Francisco to give us some of his own marketing presentation. What I'm very happy about is that I think we need to do something more about this subject. When I look at what we've covered, I think that we're not doing Africa justice because we haven't given it enough time. So we're going to have to put together a separate platform where we're going to invite all of you back. And then this time around, we're going to get all the guys who are involved in club football and federations and all of them into a setup where they have to listen to what needs to be done from top to bottom. But I mean, for me, just listening here, I find incredible knowledge and insight being shared. I'm better off for it. If I was to make a decision now, I think I'm better off from 2 hours ago or from yesterday onto this moment. It's been amazing. So we'll start with Amrish and then go right across the room.
Sure, thank you, Emeka. Yeah, great conversation, everyone. I think we can all talk a lot about everything. I think the main three things is that we have to really focus on if we are to accelerate things in the African region and with sports tech, is we have to look at it as a problem-solving challenge. We have to look at the context of the problem we need to solve and how this can relate to the bigger ecosystem, whether it's in the club, the department, or even on a federation or league point of view. And then you have to get that alignment with everyone as well. But that alignment only comes through education. So the second thing would have to be, would analyze each one of those clubs, ecosystems, or frameworks. And the third one, you'd have to provide strategies using relevant sports tech as a tool, but then you have to also use the expertise to enhance the problem solving to develop the overall ecosystem. The thing about technology and artificial intelligence is that AI is always going to be evolving. It's going at rapid speed, but you can never ever take away human connection, human emotion, and human experience, and looking at the context of things. Because the reason I say context, because the most important thing. So I think you bring all those things together, you look at the scenarios, you get the alignment, the players, the coaches, the managers, the board members. Even the board members have to understand how it's helping the organisation. So you have to look at whatever you have on the field. If it's something like Harcourt Sport, for example, most people in the board members don't really have much experience from our performance point of view. So you have to also show them how it also relate to them as an organisation. So, for example, Catapult, for example, is going to help your players be managed for their workload, which then helps manage them assets so they don't get injured, so they can play, which means that you can then have commercial strategies to enhance your organisation, etc., etc. So that's my view so far. I'll pass on to Monèm, and then we'll go around.
Yeah. Thanks, Amrish. Well, just very quickly as well, thank you again for this wonderful debate and chat. I very much agreed with many things have been said by many of the panels. My point here, and what I wanted to say is, why technology, why data? Well, first of all, because most of the important things is coaches and managers, they do rely mostly on their own observation, on their own intuitions. But most of the cases, their observation is not objective, but rather subjective. It could be influenced by many things, but could be influenced by the fans, by the managers, by friends, by what they read on the newspapers. But that's why science, that's why technologies and techniques could help very much optimizing this observation and put some sense on what the managers have to decide in order to make the difference, in order to make change, in order to win, in order to go into a podium. As Chris said, mistakes are so often made, and mistakes are and could be very expensive. They could be expensive for the players themselves. They could be injured, they could injure themselves, but they could also be very expensive for the team, because when a good player is injured or on a bench, that would cost lots of money and they could miss very good opportunities. So there are lots of techniques and lots of tools and technologies that could be applied in order to help resolving issues coming from the field and up the scales in order to save those save these problems. Most importantly, there are many experts and many skilled, let's say, scientists who could help. And those experts and scientists, well, they go to universities and have degrees. So the solution is very basic and very easy to solve. Sports institutions, federations have to link very much and very importantly and crucially with universities, with academic institutions where the knowledge is provided. Universities, institutions, and academic institutions are the knowledge providers. They are the state-of-the-art research and technologies, and those are the places where all things are performed, are, let's say, invented. And then I would really recommend links between clubs, federations, governing bodies with the institutions in order to get things up to date and up to scales, and in order to change the mentality of the top people, but also from the bottom people and the managers, because if the managers are convinced with those scientists and skills and technologies, and then they will encourage their staff to go to workshops, go to attend seminars, conferences, attend those debates, and look at what we're doing at the moment. We are using basic technologies. We call it basic, but it's not basic, it's internet. And that put us all together in order to share lots of knowledge, change the spirits, change the knowledge attitude, and we may also change our practices in the future. And we surely influence the world by what we say and what we share at the moment. And that's what we do. We do comment, we do debate in order to change mentalities and attitudes. My final point here is, now, in order to change things, we need to organize these debates so often. And then what we do in the ISAFA, the International Science of Football Association, is we provide lots of opportunities for coaches and coaching educations. Nobody would know about this, but I'm going to reveal it right now. Our next event will be in Oxford, UK. And that will be on the weekend of the 26th, 27th of March, 2021. And hopefully it will be face-to-face if this pandemic go away and everybody's safe. So I will advertise for it very soon, and it will be an opportunity for coaches to get together, but also scientists, medicals, physiotherapists to share the latest up-to-date knowledge, techniques and technologies, and maybe data and data.
We'll help you promote it once you get some information. We will share it to our network in Africa. So that's
excellent. Yeah. Thank you again. Thank you very much, everybody. Emeka in particular, and Damage.
Chris.
Can we hear from Richard? Closing points based on your scope.
Yeah, no, thank you, and thanks for inviting me onto this. And it was interesting, Emeka's kind of point about buy-in and leadership. And I think if you look at the models of ownership within the Premier League, you can clearly see whether they are from betting companies, whether they're accountants, whether they're from American sports. So obviously, they're more likely to have this buy-in to understanding that data is really, really important. I guess it's how you ensure that your head coaches, your other people working with the organization. So the kind of my point originally about, what data is important, what means something to people. I think it's really important to understand what your head coach wants and needs and to provide him with that information. And within a talent ID kind of spectrum, I suppose player trading is one of the biggest income generators or income losses that you might have within football across the world. So how do you work efficiently and effectively, but also how do you mitigate, the mistakes to make sure that it's not dire when you make a mistake on either buying a player, the wrong one, or, letting one go for too cheap. So, having good data, having good analytics, and also having people that understand linked to a very strong philosophy is really, really important.
Thank you. I think the pattern we're seeing as well is it's all about having that kind of reflective culture, and that evolving process is really important. We'll go on to Chris for your closing points. Would you like to share, please? Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. I'm not going to labour this because most of the comments that have been made are reflective of my thoughts. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to make some small contribution to this event. I'm excited to be a part of it because as much as a lot of questions regarding roadblocks and challenges have been raised, they're the same roadblocks and challenges that have been raised in other parts of the world. And I know Africa is unique, I know it's different, and the solutions will be different and they'll be unique. But actually, I think the excitement is in everybody trying to create those and find those solutions and push sport forward across the continent. That's my comment. Thank you.
I think one of the main things is as well is like learning from everyone's experiences. You have a massive amount of diverse experiences to problem solve. So I think an opportunity like this is really good for us to all be on. Emeka, I'll pass on to you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Emeka Okoye, do you have a final word? You have to unmute.
Okay. I hadn't finished my presentation, so I wanted us to see so many things, especially some of the usage, so so that we can think for Africa. But this is the thing. We need to be experimental. Okay, so every point everybody has made, has been solid. We need to be experimental. Okay, to have that, to overcome our fear. We need to look at things from a small point of view. I totally agree that we don't need so much data, but this is the thing about big data. Whenever we say big data, it's actually small data. So we need the big data so that we can get our small data.
You guys are part of the problem. When these scientists come out and they say big data, immediately management is scared.
Yeah, that's the thing. But the truth of the matter is that it's never big data, it's small data. These are where the analytics come in. So we pull the little that we need. Okay, so the thing is, we just need to be a little bit experimental and a little bit curious, and then see how we can augment our decision making. Okay, simple decision making. That's the easiest way, you can move into this. Africa really needs to. There's a part we are not talking about data. We didn't hint so much about it, but I'm going to say it. Football is doing open data, but people don't know. So when you release, like the Premier League releasing their data publicly, you're actually increasing engagement. You're actually increasing value creation. You're actually allowing innovative companies to play with those data and bringing more people to the game. Now, bringing in more people to the game means that you're increasing the revenue. It's the same philosophy of open data when you look at it from a country point. Use it to spur innovation, create wealth, create employment and everything. So that's the thing, because right now we have engagement challenges. So we need to take this data thing seriously in Africa, boost engagement, and increase revenue.
Thank you very much, Emeka, and thanks to Amrish, Chris, Monèm, Michael, and Burak. I just want to say, look, one of the reasons why we've partnered with the University of Port Harcourt Sports Institute is one, we have we setting up a sports innovation hub there, which is one of the reasons why we put together this whole platform, is because we want to have these conversations more. So we are going to have a sports tech session, which will be it'll be like 3 or 4 hours, and we're going to bring everybody back, and we're going to get people around to tune into it. And the idea is to actually drill down on this information and have the right confirmation so that we get the guys who make decisions to ask questions. We're going to invite Professor Michael Goldman, but I just want Professor Ken Anukweche, who's the director of the University of Port Harcourt Sports Institute, to just say a word of appreciation to this wonderful panel. We thought yesterday we had a fairy panel with marketing. Today, sports tech was on fire. Prof?
Yeah, thank you, Emeka. I've listened with rapt attention all day, and I must tell you, I'm very, very, very overwhelmed. Kirian and Chris Barnes, Professor Jemni, I'm sure I'm getting their names right, Amrish, they've been very, very impressive in their presentations. But one thing about new tech, well, it is important from what we have heard to employ technology and the use of data. But one thing, like I discussed with Mario Leo the other day, when such new equipment are on offer, we in the university, we are bothered about the validity of those equipment, the reliability of those equipment, and the correlation, test with test. I'm sure you know what I'm going about. And when such things have been established, then we can run with those equipment. But now it looks like many of them are still experimental, although they've been applied to various clubs, various formations, but we still have to know what the validity and reliability tests have come to. Then secondly, let me use this opportunity, since we are talking about sports science and tech, to explain some basic concepts as we understand them. Sports science is an overarching term, which also is described as sports science and medicine. And it's simply the use of applied science in training and the use of applied science to improve the performance of an athlete in training and competition. And it encompasses many disciplines: exercise physiology, nutrition, sports psychology, basic care, primary care sports medicine, and the rest of them. These terms have been used interchangeably from one speaker to the other. And if we continue like that, we may lose the essence of the term sports science. Exercise physiologists are scientists and are a part of sports science. Where the confusion now arises mainly is the role of medical doctors in sports science. It is grossly misunderstood. Their role, for all intents and purposes, is primary medical care of athletes. Sometimes they want to involve in the performance analysis of athletes, which actually they shouldn't stray into without any empirical background. So I would want our panelists to speak more on this issue so that everybody knows their boundaries, so that a primary sports medicine basic care practitioner does not arrogate to himself that he has to be a performance analyst or he has to run commentaries on nutrition and things. Yes, all those things are taught in medical school, but the International Olympic Committee Medical Commission, which is the umbrella body under which all of us work, has tried to define to share responsibilities. And for primary care medical practice, I think their job begins and ends in to help prepare the athlete for training and competition, help prevent ill health and treat those ill healths when they appear, help prevent injuries, and help manage those injuries when they occur, and then help the physical therapy people to program the athlete to return to training and competition. So I would want you, especially Professor Jemni, who I have listened to intently, to please speak more on these issues.
Thank you so much, Professor Ken, and maybe you want to get a response from Jemni.
Yeah, well, I can't agree more, and we share exactly the same point of view, Dr. Kenneth. Well, the roles of the sports scientist have been quite, let's say, ignored for many years, but then we're coming back on force, and we've proven ourselves that we could help not only the sports in terms of sports in general, but also the general population because of our expertise into helping people to get fitter, to get healthier. And the proof, and the strong proof, is what we're doing at the moment and what we live in at the moment with this COVID-19 crisis and pandemic, where most of us are confined in, walls, in apartments and rooms and maybe houses, whereas all governments worldwide are encouraging their people and population to stay active, not only for their physical and physiological, let's say, benefit, but also for their mental state and spirit. The role of exercise scientists, like what you said, either exercise physiologists or exercise psychologists, exercise biomechanics, et cetera, has been expanded, and we're reaching out more and more clubs and sports. Football obviously is something very big and immense worldwide, where there's lots of resources, lots of money, lots of expertise and experts. The digitization, the mobile devices, the portable devices are making our life and our business and our expertise even easier at the moment, because wherever we are, we can take our equipment in our boots, in our car, and we could help the players, we could help the team into getting more data, accurate, precise, valid, first of all. Don't forget, Dr. Kenneth, most of those technologies on the market at the moment have been set and invented by sports scientists and technicians or technologists or engineers, or by the combination and the collaboration between sports scientists and engineers at university settings. Most of these equipment are actually validated, published in peer-reviewed journals, and then people could rely on those expertise and experts. I don't say that many companies invent their own products and go on the market and sell them with a huge marketing campaign and a huge money in order to provide, let's say, ideas or maybe opinion about that. But some of the companies rely and go back to us into our lab to say, okay, we want to work alongside with you. We want our products to be validated. Would you please check us out? Are these equipment fit for purpose? Do they do what we think they do? And I have personally worked with many big companies worldwide. I'm not going to mention the names, but where, yes, we said these equipments are really good, but certain times I said, sorry, the equipment that you are pretending to do this are not fit for purpose, and we cannot say anything else rather than the truth, because our reputation will be on the market. We could really hurt lots of people if we say this, for example, this machine will burn fat, whereas it doesn't. When we take it in our lab and we assess it and we examine it, we cannot pretend that it does burn fat, whereas it doesn't, because we do science. We don't give flowers to companies, even though they support our research and they give us lots of money in order to please them. But most of the cases, we please our knowledge. We make sure that the science that comes out of our labs is accurate, valid, and most importantly, it will help people to get fitter and to get healthier without any secondary effect. So yes, I do kind of reiterate and emphasize what you said. We have to talk a little more. We have to do a little more of like vulgarization, promoting our expertise, not only in sports, but outside of our boxes, outside of our labs. You know, social media, those debates and panels are really good platforms to talk about ourselves and to help lots of different people in different perspectives and contexts, not only in terms of physiology, but also mental state and any other expert, nutrition, diet, etc. Lots of people want to lose weight, for example. You know, losing weight is not only one magic solution. It's not about like reducing
intake of calories.
No, it's not about. It's about, you know, social context. It's about lifestyle. It's about data, you know, measuring. It's about medicine, medication. It's also about psychology. So it's all working together in order to get the best return into this context. So again, thank you ever so much for the comment, and I can't agree more with that. And we have to get little more together in order to promote ourselves and to do more business and more promotion of the sport.
Thank you. Yes, I thank you very much. You see, I had to raise this question because in most of Africa, club doctors and team doctors are expected to work magic beyond their their terrain. So that's why I raised this question. I think my colleagues who are listening in or who are watching will now be more comfortable in their practice. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. Well, just to comment on that, yes, we do work alongside medical doctors. Most of the cases we try to, you know, kind of limit ourselves to the business we do and the doctors as well, the medical doctors, by looking after the players from their, let's say, health and medication point of view. The sports scientists work alongside the coaches and the staff and the technical staff, but we do share lots of data between the medical staff and the sports scientists when it comes to clubs and big clubs. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. This has been a wonderful panel. We've overrun, and my apologies to Professor Goldman. But we're going to go to Professor Goldman, but I just want to say thank you, and a special thanks to Amrish. Please check out the website for Volute Sports. It's volutesport.com, VOLUTESPORT .group, actually, it's not .com. I think I got too much .com in my brain. Yeah, so sometimes I get it wrong, but thank you so much and really appreciate everything that you've done. I'd like to invite